Okay guys, it's still November 8th. Wanted to finish this article by Bryan Tews for the Discovery Channel. Just look up his name, Bryan Tews, on Google. Um, and I want to go ahead and finish reading this. I think it'll only take me 15 minutes. Once they have consistent statistics, the system will use previous choice references, and inject them into your subconscious thought during normal activity, which is also referred to as impulse injections, to convince you that the response was your own and influence you to complete or describe the reference by making the appropriate verbalization or performing a related act, which is known as verification. You can fight and or control this if you learn to defeat these memory attacks by learning to read active memory. Once they see what you respond to emotionally or intellectually, they will fabricate conversational or situational scenarios, street theater, based on events or topics they know will capture your attention. For example, if you are a football fan, they will talk about your favorite team or will wear a t-shirt or hat with your favorite football team's emblem. They do this with me a lot, as they know I'm a University of Georgia fan. So they constantly wear UGA t-shirts, hats, etc., pretending to be a Georgia fan or to be from Georgia in order to try and stimulate me towards talking with them and to keep me talking to them. This is why the perps try to keep you talking for so long. Not just to aggravate you, but to provoke you into an emotional response so they can map your thought process in order to subsequently inject impulses, etc., and control your mind. This is why the feds try to get people close to you, e.g. by approaching you and or befriending you with a hot girl or a handsome guy with so-called honey traps. Here is how you stop that from happening. Ignore all prolonged random encounters with strangers you don't know and be spontaneous. The same remote neural attack can be used to disrupt your speech if the attackers decide to prevent you from discussing a specific topic or repeating a given word. The system can be configured to disrupt your recollection when formulating a related statement or inject gibberish, triggering substitution while you are attempting to speak. The goals of these attacks appear to be threefold: censorship, memory management, and direct behavioral control. These people are not concerned with legal constraints or any particular acceptable way of life. They simply use anything you enjoy, hate, or appreciate to abuse you regardless of your behavior. So if they give you a compliment, realize that they are only doing it to see how you will respond when they turn around to negate it and torture you nightly. If you keep a constant handle on your state of activity, as well as your situational perceptions, you will recognize conflicting impulses, and although it is possible for these systems to overpower your impulses, if you understand the attacks, you will be able to recognize the physical changes resulting from these powerful impulses, and this should prompt you to reevaluate your current state. I'm going to go down. Here we go. Unless you have been tortured to near incoherency, you should be able to fight the system's influences. These remote neural attacks are most effective when you are stepping through sequence tasks, so try to avoid zoning on your activities. How? By changing your actions and activities randomly and constantly at the speed of thought. Don't always plan out or think out daily itinerary if you don't have to. Just do it. Remote neural manipulation is accomplished via their system's ability to interpret your thoughts and is wholly dependent on its ability to predict and influence your reference choices, or impulse sequencing during thought composition. The system maps patterns with impulses and identifiers, evoked potentials, and uses statistical data about your composition habits to predict how you will think or act as you begin to formulate thoughts or prepare to act. The system's ability to define and map these references intelligibly depends on your cooperation or ignorance, and the attacker's ability to make sense of what they see visually or what they can guess based on your past activity. 3. Quenching. They will constantly run you through a verification routine where the system probes you for a particular set of responses repeatedly in order to establish a pattern. If you are interacting and countering these probes, the operator will vary the routine in an attempt to verify via different methods. Once the system verifies the selected responses, they will be used in the next wave of harassment routines. The process is endless, and you will see the effects clearly if you are consistently defeating the system. If you are not defeating the remote neural system, then you will not see or notice the effects. The way to defeat their remote neural monitoring system is by quenching. You quench remote neural monitoring by interacting with and countering their tactics. None of what these people are collecting could ever be used in a case against you. Every piece of information collected by their system can be considered falsified and or fabricated because the system is designed to continuously provide suggestions according to data which has been previously collected about your current activity, and the accuracy of reference descriptions, definitions, is extremely low since the attackers don't really care about truth and the system will fabricate statements and or imagery while they are abusing you. The fabrications are generally the result of misinterpretation of references and emotional indicators, as well as distortion of injection feedback. In addition to false entries added manually by the attackers as a result of their inability to understand what they are viewing or their malintent. There is no reliable way for the attackers to determine what is true, even if they try to apply their observations to the aforementioned indicators. An attempt to prove guilt with their system would be the equivalent to a cop dropping a gun at a crime scene and claiming it belonged to some individual who happened to be passing by, random and falsified. I think that is very, very true. Let's see here. Go down. It's long. It's a very, very long article. There is no legal application for this system or anything generated by it. They will only capture what they want to abuse you with, and when they decide to censor your thoughts, they will force you into an abusive or incoherent thought pattern using the injection and blocking methods mentioned above. For example, when you experience sudden severe aggression and agitation, it's the perps, not you, and it's part and parcel mind control. They injected those impulses. Remember, they want to keep you constantly thinking about them. You can limit and counter this effect by learning to read memory while blocking their system. However, it takes quite a bit of skill and self-awareness. This is known as redirection. Redirection. Number 4, redirection. Redirection is simple. When the remote neural attack happens and impulses and thoughts are introduced into your mind by strong urge, high-frequency attack, or slight motivation, low-frequency attack, just change your thread of thought. This hinders integration completion between your brain and the R&M system. You do this by establishing what is known as a working reference. The Bible says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Philippians 4:8. You can thwart their R&M attack by establishing a working reference each time they attempt to inject impulses and thoughts to your brain. This is done by recognizing something in life that makes you very happy and then refocusing or redirecting back to that happy experience in life each time you are attacked through R&M. If you do this each day, their attacks will simply be an annoyance to you as you can work around it. But it will still hinder performance tremendously as you will be forced to test and validate memory constantly, and the physical sensations of the system radiating your brain will be both irritating and distracting. Note that these attacks can be performed successfully at lower intensities, and you may initially only notice them if you are frequently being tested at higher intensities. Torture. Understanding the memory attacks, blocking your real memories, and injecting false memories and impulses are key because if you do not recognize modification of your active memory, the system will cause you to briefly lose time perception, which may be enough procedural, functional disorientation to influence you to respond to an injected impulse. Forced speech, for example. It is possible for the system to influence you to speak unwillingly, or at the very worst, without you knowing it. For example, if you are susceptible to the system's influence, you may not realize that it is frequently or constantly influencing you to make minor choices. These motivational impulses can also be used to influence you in a manner that will give you the desire to speak. And I emphasize desire because you need to understand that these impulses will only make you feel the urge at higher levels set by the attackers or basic motivation at baseline levels to perform the tasks it is influencing you to do. Now, in combination with this motivation to speak, the system uses past references to direct you. For example, your personal memory of turning to speak to your wife and the associated impulse, and when you react to this influence, the system will block your working memory while streaming the desired output, which will result in you making one or more statements under the system's control. They will test this on you frequently with word substitution, and if you can learn to control this in thought, then you can control it while speaking out. You can control it while speaking, but you must learn to multitask constantly and to read memory. If you do not have a working reference to return to after the forced speech attack, it is possible that you will have no recollection of making the statement. If you have a hard time understanding how remote neural monitoring works, just think of how a lie detector works. In theory, R&M functions in a similar manner to a lie detector by measuring physiological responses emitted by the body. In R&M, it is those physiological responses emitted via electromagnetic impulses by the brain. As you learn to defeat the predictive capabilities of the system, quenching, redirection, multitasking, and spontaneity, their attempts to restrict your reference choices will become increasingly evident, and you will begin to perceive that what I will describe as functional duality. It might also be described as focal duality within your working memory. The PERP system's prediction error rate will dramatically increase, and its attempts to predict your thoughts or intentions will become humorous, if not simply annoying. Thought-triggered attacks. Seeing the relationship between your memory references and the system's output, which can be a specific directed energy attack, an audible forced speech sequence, etc., is critical to understanding how to control and ultimately defeat thought-triggered attacks, in addition to preventing the attackers from deceiving you with their cognitive magic tricks. You should be able to redirect the system during formulation, collecting data by reading your mind, or prevent predictive interpretation of data from injected thoughts and impulses altogether. But when you learn to stop integration, realize that the system will be waiting for completion and will probe you for a response. It will begin to inject again if you attempt to ignore it. So unless you have extremely high memory skill and have learned the quenching technique, redirection may be the easiest option. They will also abuse you in every way possible to convince you that they are in control, when you will be able to see clearly that they are nothing more than idiots who need to spend more time studying the systems they are abusing people with. If the system's suggestions are not acceptable to you, and they won't be if you're consistently blocking and or redirecting it, then this will result in you making a continuous effort to counter the imposition of thoughts and impulses while contrasting your working state to maintain active focus. Although by cooperating and allowing the system to interpret and define your daily activity, you may find that the suggestions become more tolerable as the system is designed to mimic your normal cognitive behavior. I would recommend not allowing this, as you will tend to more readily accept the system's influence, and the purpose of the system influencing you in this manner is to give the attackers the ability to restrict you at will and to allow them to deceive or manipulate you subconsciously. You can only counter these restrictions if you are able to contrast the system's influence from your own willful activity. Everyone who is hearing V2K is being monitored in this manner and being influenced in this way as well. The phrases you are hearing should be related to information captured during the silent monitoring period and will eventually be used as foundation for your endless verbal harassment. What they do is a game of deception and manipulation, nothing more. Do not accept anything they say as truth, and do not acknowledge anything the system interrogates you about as truth. The system will take random bits of anything it captures through your senses and fabricate stories which they will use to harass and interrogate you, with no intention other than to distract and torture you into submission to the system's influence. If you learn to defeat the remote neural memory and thought process attacks, then you can render remote neural monitoring useless or manipulate it to your advantage. Your advantage would be to be able to document and verify it is happening in a court of law. People who take a stand and try to oppose this evil are labeled by our government as